Landlords and the Michigan Chamber of Commerce are suing over a law that requires at least 2 hearings in eviction court before they're able to remove tenants. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article, and it's coming out of Michigan. And Michigan isn't known as being one of those places that's, extremely anti-landlord, but there are some laws and rules in place, and this is true for states and cities, municipalities all over the country. There are some laws in place that are really detrimental to landlords within the state. So the law in particular in this article that I'm going over actually requires landlords, who are going through eviction processes to have at least 2 hearings. So this basically requires a landlord to pay the rent for somebody who might not be paying rent for an additional amount of time. And that's just not fair, okay? It's just wrong that they would say, hey, this tenant who has no actual way to possibly fight this case, they get to go through 2 hearings. That's ridiculous and it's stupid. And hey, they're calling it out and they're suing over it. They're trying to get this law thrown out, and I don't blame them because it's going to cost landlords tens of thousands of dollars extra in lost rental income. Not only that, but this actually hurts the tenants as well, because every additional expense that a landlord has to incur means that, hey, we're going to have to compensate elsewhere in order to cover our losses. So that means we're going to raise rents, or we're going to add fees, or we're going to, tighten our application criteria, make it even harder for people to rent, and make it even harder for people who are lower income to find quality housing, because we're basically, our hands are tied. We have to do that sort of stuff. And that's not what a lot of people want to see. They want to see it easier for people to get housing and less expensive. But the more rules, the more regulations you put on good landlords who are already doing everything they're supposed to be doing, well, the worse things become. And, I understand they're always, I think that a lot of these people, they have good intentions, right? They have good intentions. Oh, we're going to hit those bad landlords and hit them hard, because I keep reading these newspaper articles about these bad landlords, but they have no concept of the fact that those bad landlords that they're reading the newspaper articles about, they make up like less than 1% of the total number of landlords throughout a city or a state or a jurisdiction, okay? So you're going, making all these laws and all these rules trying to attack those bad landlords who make up less than 1%, and then the other 99% who are already doing everything according to the law and doing everything right, they're the ones who suffer. They're the ones who have to, make hard decisions on raising rents on people, okay? So stop with all this nonsense. If you want to go after those bad guys, those few bad players, go after them specifically, and don't come after every single landlord in the entire area. Oh man, it's ridiculous, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think of when these jurisdictions, right, be it a city or a state or even the federal government, rather than just going after the few individuals who are causing the problem, they come after everybody and then punish everybody? They create these stupid blanket laws. What do you think of that? I mean, it's pure government bureaucracy in my mind, right? They're, too lazy to go after the bad players, and they're just like, oh, well, we're just going to punish everybody instead. I mean, it's stupid, okay? Anyway, let me get into this article, okay? This article is coming from the michamber.com, and that's the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, and it says, affordable housing further at risk under proposed changes before Michigan Supreme Court. And they have pretty good details in this article, so let me get into it. This Michigan Chamber of Commerce looks out for members and broader or unintended policy consequences for our businesses, communities, and families at every turn. Whether that is through the legislative process or proposed rules and changes from the executive or judicial branches of our state. This week, that includes proposed amendments to Administrative Order 2020-17 and Michigan Court Rule 4.201 before the Michigan Supreme Court. These changes would ultimately make permanent processes that were put into place under the COVID-19 pandemic. This proposed permanence further exacerbates the availability or lack thereof of affordable housing in our state by requiring a 2-hearing minimum to solve disputes between landlords and tenants, delaying when a residence can be occupied. The full official Michigan Chamber comments are below. So yeah, they're fighting these ridiculous rules that were put into place during the pandemic, okay? And, you know, when all these rules came into place during the pandemic, they're like, oh, this is temporary. You know, as soon as the pandemic is over and things go back to normal, we're going to get rid of these rules. That's garbage, okay? It was a bunch of crap then, and, you know, I didn't believe it. Nobody believed it, and a lot of the rules are still in place. In fact, they've created even more rules. And fortunately, you know, the really bad stuff like the eviction moratoriums actually did come down, but now they're trying to replace those with permanent eviction protections in some places, okay? So, yeah, the Michigan Chamber of Commerce is fighting these rules that they put in place and are trying to make permanent, and I hope they win because, you know, bad news for landlords, especially with this 2-hearing thing. This memo is to voice the Michigan Chamber of Commerce's concerns regarding proposed changes and potential permanence of Administrative Order Number 2020-17 and Michigan Court Rule 4.201. Making these processes permanent, which were put in place during the COVID-19 pandemic, is both untimely and harmful because it would further exacerbate Michigan's affordable housing market and the success of landlords across the state. We urge the Michigan Supreme Court to take a close look at the proposed changes, many of which were only utilized and needed due to the unprecedented global pandemic. Specifically, we ask for the reconsideration of the 2-hearing minimum. This minimum was originally intended to provide more flexibility for landlords to receive reimbursement funds from the federal government to prevent eviction, as eviction was characterized as a public health concern. However, this process no longer serves that purpose and now only delays traditional practices and compounds various issues regarding housing. So yeah, they put this 2-hearing minimum rule in place because they wanted landlords to have a chance to be able to get the rental assistance money, right? Well, I don't think that rule was ever needed, honestly. I don't think the rental assistance was needed. I don't think eviction moratoriums were needed. And I don't think this stupid rule was needed either, right? But that's just me personally. Now, I understand why the Chamber of Commerce is saying this because, you know, they don't want to look like the bad guys in this situation. But, you know, they're saying, hey, we're not the bad guys. You know, look at this logically. You know, this rule isn't needed anymore. So they're a little bit kinder than me because I would just come out and just be honest. Listen, all of that was garbage in the first place. We should have never had it in the first place. And now let's get rid of it before they make this crap permanent. Okay? The Michigan Chamber is the unified voice of approximately 5,000 members employing over 1 million Michiganders, trade associations, and local chambers of commerce of every size and type in all 83 counties of the state. Within our diverse membership, there is a shared concern around the lack of available and affordable housing, as well as the need for policies that allow businesses to operate without undue government interference and regulation. Now more than ever, Michigan must remain competitive with other states by ensuring that Michigan statutes, regulations, and processes do not negatively impact the already seemingly ever-present housing crisis. Michigan simply cannot afford to adopt practices that may perpetuate this issue further and make it more difficult for current and future Michiganders to find housing. Yeah, I don't really like this statement, right? The way it's written wasn't like, you know, a way that normal people, you know, it's kind of written in a way like lawyers wrote it, okay? You know, it's very technical, very, you know, trying to cover all their bases, right? Just be very simple. Use plain language. Talk in a way that people actually communicate and people will be able to relate with you better. That's my suggestion to the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. I have no problem with what they're doing, standing up for landlords' rights, but this statement they made is just awful, in my opinion, okay? And, you know, just, it reeks of legalese, right? Nobody wants to read this garbage, okay? I'm a landlord. I'm in support of this issue, but to me, you know, just the way they have it written out here is so just like, oh, we you know, blah, 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 you know, and like that. Listen, okay, let's make this really simple, okay? Landlords are... And this is the way I see it, okay? So don't think that this is coming from the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, right? But here's the way I see the issue. landlords, they suffered greatly through the whole eviction moratorium nonsense, right? A lot of them weren't properly compensated through the rental assistance programs, and then a lot of states, such as Michigan, they threw additional rules on top of the eviction moratoriums that made it even more difficult for landlords. So if we look at this through the perspective of what the state of Michigan was doing, right, they put the 2 hearing rule in place so that landlords would have the opportunity to at least hopefully get the rental assistance money to compensate them before a person was evicted. Now, all of the eviction moratoriums, are over, and a lot of the rental assistance programs are over as well. So this rule is not needed. Having a 2 hearing minimum, the only thing it's doing is making a landlord, in cases where a person wouldn't have been protected and is no longer protected by the eviction moratorium, they're making the landlord pay additional money out of their pocket so that a tenant can stay in their property rent-free, and giving the tenant even more time to, to accrue more debt that they won't be able to pay back. And this is not a good thing, okay? Instead, we need to get the ball rolling and allow the eviction process to continue like it was before the pandemic. And that's a very simple way to say it without all this garbage that the Chamber of Commerce put in their little article.